This is Popular Front, a podcast focused on the niche details of modern warfare and underreported conflict with me, Jake Hanrahan. Today we're speaking to journalist James Stout. He's going to be talking to us about his work covering the 3D printed guns of the Myanmar rebels. They've been using JStark's FGC-9 to try and combat the brutal junta that has taken over the country. For many of the Myanmar rebels, JStark is a hero to them and has essentially left his legacy for them to keep fighting. If you like what we're doing, please support us at patreon.com/popularfront or popularfront.co/support. My microphone broke, so this episode might sound a bit shit. Apologies. So, you've recently been on a trip to the borders of Myanmar and areas around there. You've been looking into the proliferation of 3D printed guns, particularly JStark's FGC-9, which are now in the hands of many Myanmar rebels that are fighting the junta. Can you tell us about that? What's the situation? How many are there? How prevalent is this?
Yeah, definitely I can. So my insight into it is from one individual who is part of, obviously, a network of individuals who are taking part in the whole printing, the organizing of the printing, the obtaining of materials, that kind of thing. So, like, from what we understand, it's very prevalent. There are an awful lot of them. And you've shared a lot of videos of them being used, right? It's not... At first, we thought they were just used as, like, a training or, like, a gun that you could drop or even potentially, like, burn, right, or melt or have it be deniable. But I think it's broader than that. I think that there's a huge number of these FGC-9s being created in different dispersed manufacturing facilities, and then those are not so much going to the front line, it seems, but presumably being stockpiled for something else.
A lot of people that don't really fully understand 3D printed firearms have said things like, why would they use a 3D printed gun? It shoots a 9mm bullet. What use is that against the big military junta of Myanmar? Obviously, we understand that guerrilla warfare doesn't really need the kind of weapons that people think it needs. But maybe just explain what it is. How useful are these things? Why is it? I guess why are they using these and not normal guns? And how useful are they?
Yeah. First of all, I think you've obviously seen a lot of conflict as well. This is a relatively unique conflict in that most of the world has far too many guns, right? The large places we've covered before are awash with guns. That's not really the case in Myanmar. Civilian gun ownership isn't really a thing. Certain ethnic groups were allowed to own shotguns and muzzle loading weapons. So that's like a musket, right? Like you see in old timey kind of historical reenactments and stuff. They didn't have a lot of weapons, and there are ethnic armed organizations, we might want to get into that, who do have weapons, but this influx of largely Generation Z young people who have left the cities after the coup, want to fight for democracy. They don't have weapons, and buying weapons at the Thai border is prohibitively expensive for them. It's massively expensive. We can talk about their fundraising because that's very interesting too. But the way that they obtain these weapons is literally and Robert Evans, my colleague, and myself have a series on this, and we have another series coming out on the next week, so that'll be starting the 8th of November, about sort of how they got into making these guns. And it seems like people basically found it on Reddit, on the FOSCAD subreddit, and were like, holy shit, we can make these guns, and began to make them. In terms of, one of the reasons is because they're obtainable to them, right? In a way that and you'll see a lot. So a young fighter called Zor, who Robert and I spoke to, who unfortunately was killed in an airstrike on the day our last episode released. Yeah, it was very sad. It was, people die. It's the nature of the job, but it was rough.
That's fucked up, man.
Yeah, it impacted me a lot because he was such a nice young man. And not, fucking you have to be nice or whatever, you're killing people is your job. But he was so nice. He'd call me and we'd talk on Zoom, we'd talk on Skype, and he was always happy, having a nice time. Now he's fucking dead because, someone dropped a Russian bomb on him. And it breaks you when, not that people shouldn't care about Ukraine, they absolutely should, because what's going on there is fucking horrific, right? We've seen that in Bucha and other places, but I would love for people to care about Myanmar as well. Like and there were no people on Twitter raising tens of thousands of dollars for his family, or like his poor young girlfriend who was fighting at the front with him, who's on her own now. So like he was fighting when he went to the jungle with a homemade 2.2 rifle, right? Do you think I should explain what a 2.2 rifle is?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a 2.2 rifle. It's a small gun, right? I mean, a 2.2 is what 50 Cent got shot with. And that's why they say survived, you know what I mean? But yes, it's a pretty low-powered gun, right?
Right, yeah. Like if you want to shoot a rabbit, it's great. Like anything much bigger than that, I think you'd probably choose something else, right? So what they were using these homemade bolt-action 2.2 rifles. And he sent me an entire YouTube video, actually, of how they made them and this album of them putting one together. And they're like... they're doing incredible fabrication stuff on the lathe and everything, and but they can't really get a good enough lock up in the bolt to to use a higher powered cartridge, right? So that's what they were doing. Now they've moved on to making 5.56 bolt action rifles, so they're a bit better, but still, a bolt action rifle is essentially World War I technology, right? And these aren't very good bolt action rifles. So when that's your alternative, the 9mm 3D printed submachine gun or a pistol caliber carbine or whatever you want to call it is a great choice, right? And I think people, it's really easy. I think if there's a lot of people on the internet who like to be like firearms understanders, and I understand that that's interesting, but it to an extent it doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be good enough, right? And I or you or anyone else doesn't want to volunteer to be shot with a 9mm gun because it'll kill you.
Yeah, well, I don't really understand this thing of people saying, "Oh, well, it's only a 9mm." I mean, if someone comes at you out of the bush with that and shoots you, you're probably fucked. I mean, these guns, these FGC9s, are not meant for, and were never meant for, frontline trench warfare conventional stuff. These are for, and I mean, JStark told us this himself, the main reason was for kind of guerrilla warfare in the face of tyrannical overlords, which is exactly what is happening right now in Myanmar, and it seems to be the perfect place for them. Yeah,
it does seem to be, especially when you look at the incredibly dense cities where if this revolution is successful, it will end with fighting in Yangon, right? In Mandalay, places like that, where these are incredibly heavily populated cities. You're fighting house to house, room to room. A shorter, more compact gun like that is perfect. But even if you're not, these aren't designed for suppressing fire and long range engagements. But they are fantastic for what we've seen them in, right? Which is assassinations, which is ambushes. They suppress. You can suppress them more easily, right? So they can make suppressors quite easily as well. There are they call them fuel filter kits, which you just drill through, and there are also 3D printed suppressors. So that's what people would call a silencer, right? It doesn't make the gun silent, but it makes it a lot quieter, and it also reduces the flash signature, so it makes it harder to see where the shot came from. So in that sense, they're actually very that's would probably still be the weapon of choice for a lot of counter-terrorism and that, right? When people are fighting in built-up areas, sometimes they still use those submachine guns, and so in that sense, they're perfect for what they're doing. And I don't quite get this. It's only a 9mm. I wouldn't want to be shot by a 9mm because you'll die.
Yeah, I mean, same. I definitely wouldn't. How does this work then? What's the kind of production line, if you like? How much do you know about that? How are they built? Where are they built? How do they get into the country, or are they in the country? How does it all happen? How do these FGC9s get in the hands of the rebels?
Yeah, so some of that we know, some of that we'll want to report on again in a sort of a secondary sort of upcoming trip. But from what we understand, that they're made in the country by a range of different people with access to them. Now, the internet in Myanmar can be really, really shoddy. So it's not like they're probably downloading these designs, right? There's some kind of physical aspect of getting the pen drives, and then on Reddit, I've seen them. They stockpile the filament, right? Which is the stuff that goes into the printer. That's the plastic that the printer makes the guns out of, and you do have to keep that very dry. It's important that it doesn't get wet. It doesn't print well if it gets wet. But they seem to have tons of filament because they're churning them out. And they've been even like recently one of them sent me a picture of an updated design, right? A better, it's like it's improved for durability, apparently, like an improved FGC9. So I don't know if they're doing those iterations or if it's people, the remaining people who obviously JStark isn't with us anymore, but there are other people who helped design that gun, and I know they're still active. So maybe they're helping to do these iterations, and then those are directly going into the field in Myanmar.
Yeah, well, from what I know from the circle of the kind of deterrence dispense lads and FOSCAD and all those 3D printed gun, decentralized 3D printed gun enthusiasts. I mean, without naming any names, I know there's plenty of them are just in direct contact, even with some of them. You know what I mean? And they've certainly, from the kind of safety of America, helping them with the designs. It's a fascinating process, really, to know that it started like that as a hobby and is literally now, helping these lads fight back. And we've seen plenty of photos of rebels at checkpoints and places like that with the FGC9. But actually, there was a video a month or two ago, I think, of the first actual footage of the FGC9 in action in the hands of the rebels, like an ambush or something, right?
Right, yeah. They were very much in an engagement, right? And it was working very well. And
exactly. Yeah, it was working really well. I mean, over the berm and it fires, and that's all that matters.
Right, yeah, you're sending lead across to the other person. That's all it needs to do. I think the biggest bottleneck for them, and probably why we don't see more of them used in these engagements, will be ammunition. The Sit-Tat or the Tatmadaw just means army, right? So, like, in theory, like, the both sides are Tatmadors. So we talk about the Burmese or the sort of current governing junta's army as the Tatmadaw, right? Then they're using 5.56, they're using 7.62 long, so like that's 308 inches, right? And they do use 9mm, but they don't have that many pistols, so like capturing the pistol ammo, sometimes they'll get it from the police, and a lot of their strategy seems to be based around like, how do we get more ammunition, right? So capturing a base, capturing a thing to get more ammunition, and then planning your strategy around that rather than necessarily just planning a big attack. They have to think, right, which 3 bases can we seize to get the ammunition to do this big attack? And because not all the soldiers are carrying pistols, when they do capture or kill a group of soldiers, they're getting 5.56, they're getting 308, and then they often using those rifles. But the choke point for now is probably ammunition, and why we're not seeing more of them. Yeah, and I know there are ways, like I've seen the how to make your own ammunition thing with like a nail gun primer and all that, but that requires a degree of manufacture, like supply chain and all that it is difficult to implement when you're fighting from small bases in the jungle, compared to making an FGC9 requires what? A pipe, a bolt, a 3D printer, and a USB drive. You can do it anyway. You have a solar panel and you're sorted. You don't even need to be on the internet.
Yeah, it's one of the 3D printed gun lads were making a good point to me recently, saying maybe one of the better uses of the FGC9 out there for the rebels is the fact that they have a name for it, but I forget what it is. But he was saying the fact that you can use that gun to get a bigger gun. You know what I mean? So if they shoot a police officer with the FGC9, and he goes down, they then got his gun, and eventually that ends up with a lot of weapons.
Yeah, no, he's not wrong. That's what they used the 2.2 rifles for, right? When we spoke to this lad Zor, he's saying, well, we started with them, but we weren't afraid to die because we felt like we were going to die anyway. We didn't fight, so we eventually got better weapons, and they got them, dead man's hands kind of thing. It's a bit like a computer game, but it's real. It's not funny. It's not pretend. Like, it's very serious. It would work very well for that. It works very well for those assassinations and that kind of thing, right? If you can ambush a couple of policemen, which is quite often what they'll do, they're coming home from work or whatever, like they'll do these ambushes. And then, then they've gone from 2 guns to 4 guns and as much ammunition as they can scavenge, right?
Yeah. Do you know much about the factories where these are being built? I've seen a few photos and they look very rural, but they do have, I think one I saw had like 5 different 3D printers working all at the same time. Have you come across those?
Yeah, so I've not visited any of them, and I'm hoping to visit some of them one day. But yeah, they have these sort of, I forget if they call them DIY lab, I think they call them, where they're making, and they're not just like, if you look at some of the ethnic armed organizations, they're making very nice weapons like grenade launchers, AKs, like all out of metal to a professional degree, very, very skilled craftsmanship, right? But this isn't that. This is, as you say, it's quite rural. So almost all of the resistance is in the jungles, right? In the mountains and in the jungles, because it's a lot harder for the state to penetrate there. Right? It's a lot harder for them to be found there. It's a lot harder for the government to send its troops in effective force, right? You can't just roll big tanks and armored cars through the jungle. It's even hard to bomb them, right? Because they've got this dense canopy. So a lot, and then they won't stay in the villages because the government, the Tatmadaw, has absolutely no qualms about bombing a whole fucking village. And they'll do it anyway, even when there's not rebels in there, right? They call this strategy the 4 cuts. They're trying to cut their support by doing like, get the civilians to not support the rebels by killing the civilians when the rebels are near them, which it doesn't work, right? It never worked anywhere in the world. It doesn't work here. It just makes more young people willing to fight and die because they feel like they might die anyway. But yeah, I think they're out in the countryside, and I think they are saying it's very, very decentralized. It's what it's what I know for sure, that there are, I don't know if it's tens or hundreds, but there are lots of places where they're printing them. And that's very beneficial to them, right? Because you can't knock out that productive capacity. If it's 1 or 2 printers here, 1 or 2 printers there, as long as someone's printing, then they're still okay. And they can, as long as they have their memory stick, like I said, they can't even be traced via IP address or anything because everyone there uses a VPN anyway, but they're offline, right? So they're it's very, very hard to knock out this productive capacity. Like I can't see a way short of bombing all the jungles everywhere that they could stop this now.
Yeah. Can't stop the signal, as I'm like saying.
Yeah.
Do you think they've actually, are they aware of like JStark and the way this all came about?
Yeah. So you'll hear an interview if people want to listen on our next series. It'll be on the It Could Happen Here feed. But you'll hear us talking to one of these lads who prints them. And he's saying, R.I.P. JStark. It was a sad day for all of us when we found out he died. Like we've all watched that document. No, they've watched your plastic defense. Like, no, they know exactly who he is, and they have they've got pictures from your thing on their phones and that. Like, no, he's got a lot of respect there because he's allowed them to defend themselves, to liberate themselves, to fight back against tyranny, however you want to phrase it, right? But no, to them, he's a big fucking deal.
How do they get the money to get this stuff? I know obviously there's a lot of kind of moving things back and forth across borders or whatever, but it is ultimately not, I want to say it's expensive, but it is expensive. Like the 3D printers are expensive for them initially,
Yeah. So this is fascinating, right? Right at the start of the Spring Revolution, as they call it, a lot of them realized that there were people in the civil disobedience movement who were government workers who were like, we're not working for the government while the government's killing people in the street, right? Very reasonable. And they leave work, but they're government workers and they're underpaid or not paid to begin with, right? Corruption's a problem. And so they're very poor. They very quickly can't feed their families, right? So they're like, oh, fuck, if we want this strike to go on, we have to have a strike fund, just like any other strike, right? And so what people started doing to raise money, because no one had any money to give internally, and as we've seen, the world very quickly stopped caring about Myanmar, right? As soon as the coup happened, they tried to fight back, and they genuinely, it's heartbreaking, and you'll hear it in the story. Every single one of these young people, we speak to 5 different revolutionaries, right, who all went out into the streets to protest, and they all thought if we stay in the streets and we behave peacefully and respectfully, then the UN or the EU or the US will send in some troops and they'll stop this coup and we'll have our democracy. All of them thought that, and fuck it is. And then they saw their friends die, right? So like it was heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking to hear it, honestly. Like it still gets me. It's really fucking sad that we lied to them and they believed us, and now their mates are dead and they're forever traumatized. So like 19 years old, having seen it. So what some of them did, and this is their ingenuity like never ceases to impress me. But what they did was they made YouTubes and blogs, right? And then they had embedded ads in the YouTubes. And you get a certain amount of revenue from every view, right? And you get more revenue if people click on the adverts. for like, this is how the whole like affiliate marketing and content driven commerce shit works, right? And you get more revenue if they click through and buy something. So what they would do would be create this YouTube with a clickable link in it to go through and buy something, or just to click through to the website. And then they'd send it around the organizing Telegram channels. And these Telegram channels are thousands of people, right, who are opposed to the coup. This is how they organize their flash mobs, right? They'd send it to the Telegram channel. And so they'd send the link to the Telegram channel, right, everyone set your VPN to United States, go to this YouTube video and click the advertising link. And that would generate ad revenue, right? That's how influencers and all that make their money too. And so they use that to fund their resistance, to fund their revolution. It's called Click to Donate. And they have all kinds of, they have like personal finance blogs that are targeted at US people. And I'm sure they get some organic content, like, you know, someone in Oklahoma right now is going, oh, what can I do for my retirement? And they maybe find it. But a lot of their content is them sending it around, and people who want to help them just clicking the advert. And just by clicking, they're helping.
That's incredible. Makes sense.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? It's the way, like, so much of this is like, people of like our age, right, were promised so much from the internet, and what it's turned into is like fucking people sniping at each other on Twitter all the time, and you know what I mean, like it's not what they sold us in, you know, like 1998 or whenever the internet started, but this is what they sold us, right? This is exactly, it's people coming together from around the world because you can't stop information when it's not stored in one place, and it's them using that to help and support each other. Like, they'll be very open when we talk to these people in Myanmar that some random guy in Ohio, right, in his garage is plugging, or I don't know if it's Ohio, I'm just making up a state in the middle of America. He's plugging away, making his FGC9s, and he goes out into his field and shoots them, and then he comes back and makes adjustments, shoots them, or whatever, and then posts on the Facebook group, and then one of these Burmese or people from Myanmar, right, however you want to say it, goes and says, oh, I'm having this issue, don't worry, you know, Keith in Gainesville, Florida has got the answer for you. Like, that's what we were promised from the internet, right? Is people helping people around the world. And most of it is bullshit, but like, we're getting a little bit of it here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, people always get annoyed when I say this, but I don't care. I really like a lot of the people associated with deterrence dispense, particularly, they seem to be very much in favor of the real kind of freedom, whereas a lot of American gun nuts, when they say freedom, they mean freedom for me and not for you, whereas I find that those guys mean it, and I think that's why, you know, they see this very real threat and they help. Yeah,
it's a difference between like don't tread on me, but it's okay to tread on someone else, and like don't tread on anyone, which I think is perfectly. Yeah, American gun culture is not what it purports itself to, and some people will be pissed off. I don't care. American gun culture has been very focused around a certain group of people, like chiefly straight, white, wealthy men, having all these quote unquote freedoms when they're the least marginalized by the state and really have very little to fear. And hasn't really sort of been concerned itself with other people who are oppressed and marginalized, either in the US or abroad. And you can see this in the history of US firearms law, right? But these people, I've spoken to a number of them too. They do genuinely seem committed to this idea of like more autonomy, more freedom, and helping people who are in these liberation struggles.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like you said, the very essence of what the internet was meant to be about is happening. It actually reminds me of the revolution in Egypt in a way, when that was happening, and it was really like people say, for some reason they're saying Ukraine is the first social media war. It's the biggest lot of bullshit I ever heard. I'd argue Syria was, I'd argue even Egypt was.
Egypt.
Egypt. I mean, I remember when that was happening on Twitter, and there were people like, you know, sharing things, telling them how to get back online when they shut the internet down. It's the first time I ever heard what a VPN was, you know, and for me, it's kind of the continuation of that, I think. Okay, it's different and it's a lot less noticeable, and it's a very real implementation with an actual gun, but it's a similar sort of thing, I think.
Yeah, I do remember that in Egypt, and it being like, oh, this is Twitter. Twitter's going to bring like democracy to the world. And the Arabs thinking, fucking hell. Wow, no, Elon Musk's going to do it now. Don't worry, he's going to fix it.
Don't worry about that.
But yeah. Other things that are really interesting, by the way, is talking of like how their ideology has changed, or these different ideologies. One of the things they all said to us was that they went into this with a lot of gender stereotypes, with a lot of men can do this, women can't do this, men can do that, women can't do that. And like, you'll hear it in the podcast. One of the things that they did, which is quite interesting, is that like in traditional Burmese culture, it's shameful for a man to pass underneath a woman's longi, like her clothes that she hangs up to dry outside, and he'll lose his like macho manly powers, right? So they started hanging them above their barricades in the revolution, and then the police wouldn't come through. They have to go around. Yeah, they wouldn't do it, and like
that's so fucking stupid.
Yeah, but like it is fucking stupid, and I
mean, of the police that they would just not go through, but it's clever of them, you know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's fucking and it's admirable to me, because I know, you know, I thought I knew everything when I was 19, and like they're like, oh, I was wrong about that, and I've changed my opinion because of what I've seen.
There's a lot of women fighters, aren't there?
Yeah. We've met a couple of those, and like they're incredible young women. Like they're. Yeah, even Zor in his unit, they had women serving there at the front line, often as medics. But there are also women who have fought. Yeah, and it makes sense, right? They're a small group. There's no point in alienating half the people from fighting.
Absolutely not. No. Well, if women exist, they should be able to fight. I think it's like that.
Yeah, exactly. And like, to sidetrack a bit, I don't think we liberate women by a bunch of men with guns turning up and telling them we're going to liberate them. We liberate them by giving them the guns and letting them liberate themselves.
What do you think the future holds for them? Because we're seeing a lot more innovation in terms of 3D printed weaponry. I've seen 3D printed landmines, the FGC-9, you know, we had Mark 1, there's Mark 2. I believe there's another version being worked on from what I've heard. What do you think is gonna happen? Do you think they're gonna carry on with this stuff or what?
So I think the thing that makes a difference in conflicts today, and I'm not some massive conflicts understander, is the ability to shoot down planes from the ground, right? That's what it is in Ukraine. That's definitely what it is in Myanmar. They seem to have more or less got the junta military's number when it comes to small arms engagements. But they just get bombed, right? And there's nothing they can do about it. Like literally 100 man-pads, man-portable anti-air defense systems would change the course of that war and bring democracy to that country. Now, no one's going to give them to them, right? Russians are supplying the junta. The West seems to be, you know, doing its usual. The UN is deeply concerned, bollocks. And so the obvious answer is you work out a way to 3D print. No, so that's not easy. That's not easy at all. But that is, that's what people are trying to do. That's what people are looking for. There are 3D printed grenades I've seen. There are fucking landmines all over Myanmar, which is bad and will cause injuries and death for generations. And it's incredible again to see like young people who 2 years ago were playing PUBG on their phones have now sort of trained themselves to be EOD engineers. And they're out there digging, like they've sent me videos. They're found a landmine. Yeah, we're just digging it up with this spade. You know, but it's a brave thing to do, right? But they don't want to see little children getting their legs blown off, and so they're trying to do that. It's very admirable. But I think that's a direction. If the guns make a difference, the guns make a huge difference. They allow people to defend themselves. They allow people to get better weapons, etc., etc. But war is so often fought from the air now that would be the thing that turned the tide. Now, recently, I'm sure you saw that up in the Kachin area in northern Myanmar, a Kachin cultural festival was bombed, killing, I think, 200 people. We've seen now. I've seen it just there are videos people can look on Twitter. You can find them. It's just horrible. It's really, really, really bad stuff.
Yeah, you probably fucking shouldn't. It's fucked up.
Yeah. You don't need to traumatize yourself. Like, you know, let Jake and me do it. It's our job, and then we'll just tell you about it. But it's fucked up to do that. A music festival. What they have done in doing that is bought the Kachin. They've opened up another front in the north, right? So now we're seeing more fighting in northern Myanmar. We're also seeing it in Rakhine State. We're also seeing it with the Karen. So, right, they've got 3 fronts, left, right, and top now. That the Tatmadaw are not particularly winning on any of them. So splitting their forces, I know they don't seem to be very tactically astute. So maybe this northern front, right, opens up a way for manpads to come in from China, but that seems significantly harder now than it was a long time ago. But it's possible the Kachina are better armed than some groups. There was, I don't know if you saw this, but a few months ago there was a Yakuza guy who claimed to be selling. He thought he was selling man pads to to a group inside Myanmar. It turned out he was selling them to an ATF agent in the United States. So maybe some will come in. Like I'm sure some of them won't walk about in the collapse of the US occupation of Afghanistan, right? I'm sure that some anti-air missiles were lost in that. So maybe those will make their way over there. But in terms of the 3D printing, that's the thing that would turn the tables of the war that they don't have yet.
There is 3D printed versions of not something that could shoot a plane out of the sky, but from what I've seen, some very serious 3D printed rocket launchers. So I wonder if they know about them, or they'll end up getting their hands.
They do know about them, yeah, like the Panzerfaust and that. Because I'll speak to them almost every day. Yeah, they do know about the Panzerfaust and all that, and also the. Do you remember when you were little? Do you ever have those model rockets where you like had like a rocket motor that you put up in it and like a little ignition and you press?
No, but I know what you mean. Yeah, I've seen them on the internet. Yeah.
So there are bigger versions of them which are about the size of a Pringles tube, like that wide. And there are people have made a 3D printed, basically a rocket you shove that motor into and it goes from that is a big unit. Like I imagine that could move like a warhead, right? So they can get a payload into the air, same with the Panzerfaust or these other like 3D printed bazooka things. The problem is getting it to hit the plane, I think. That requires, like, you've got to see its trajectory, follow it, intercept it, right? That requires some smart sort of programming. And there are theoretical ways to do that, according to people I've spoken to, but I haven't seen anyone do it yet.
Yeah, I think that'd be a hard process to go through in the jungle as well. Like the 3D printed FGC-9 itself is, I imagine, quite tricky, considering what they have got, which is not a lot, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and 3D printing is always finicky to begin with, right? Like, I don't know if you've ever used one. I've got one under my desk. Like, I use it to make all kinds of stuff. But, like, even when I'm trying to think, I was trying to make a shim for a bike handlebar the other day, you know, and you've got to get the bed level, and you've got to make sure that nothing's moist. Is the temperature right? Oh, it's warmer outside. You have to adjust your temperature. And so, like, that's one thing when you're making the gun, right? You can kind of see it when it goes together, but I imagine everything's even more complicated when you've got a thing that has to fly through the air and have a precise trajectory and all that. So, yeah, the place to do it isn't Myanmar. The place to do it is, I don't know, somewhere in a more sterile environment. Now, I think even doing that, US has relatively relaxed firearms laws, but I think they would take exception to you making an anti-aircraft missile, right? So almost anywhere in the world you're doing that, you're doing crimes.
You've spoken to all these lads doing these 3D printed guns in Myanmar. Have you spoken to the American lads, like on the other side, the ones that are actually helping them?
Yeah, so I've spoken to some, and I probably shouldn't say with which and who, but yeah, I've spoken to some of them, and yeah, they've been, again, they are genuinely very nice to me at least, and you know, I think people think that for some reason that there's this thing that they're all Nazis.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't really. It's very odd that it's like I don't think people really outside of a very small Twitter sphere actually think that, you know what I mean? I had a conversation with there's a lad I was talking to recently. He runs a great group, Arm Your Friends, and essentially very much like Black Liberation, Black Gun Club, stuff like that. Them kind of people are obviously smart. They understand why they need such a thing. They're not like everyone in that community is Nazi. They're just like, oh, that's interesting. I do think it's very much like, you know, I don't know. It seems to be quite a Twitter thing, but there you go. But yeah, what are those lads? What's their views on it all? Like, you know, what do they say when you speak to them? Why are they doing this?
I think it is like, look, they've phrased the whole movement in terms of that ideology of like, like you can't take it if we can make it, or whatever you want to free. You can't stop the signal, all that stuff. In terms of like, this is the way that people can resist against dictatorship. And it was theoretical until we saw it happen in Myanmar, right? It's a validation of their theory. And I think they have a genuine, I don't know, if you follow what's happening there, you can't not have empathy. Like, it's fucked up. It's horrific what's happening there. And like, I don't know who in their right mind could look at that and not be like, yeah, we should do everything we can to arm and equip these people to fight back. So I think there's a human empathy there. And then, yeah, it validates what was previously a theoretical stance, right? So I think for them, also, it's just a giant like beta testing program. Like they can, you know, when you've got thousands of people using them, you'll find the faults quite quickly. But I think they genuinely, like every time that one lad posted on Reddit, every time he posted, people just be like, "Oh, this is fucking amazing! You're my hero! What a legend!" Have you tried doing this? Have you tried doing that? And he would get engaged with them. He's very nice. He'd be like, "Oh, I've tried a 16-inch barrel. Doesn't really give." Like they're really going back and forth, just like collaborators, it's very. I think the commitment is genuine and the support is genuine, and obviously they have to be careful. Nothing that they're doing is illegal in the United States, right? And the way they do it, just putting it up on the internet and people taking it down, is not illegal. So they haven't done anything to like materially support this group. Not that this group is a terrorist group, but they can't do that. But I think that their rhetorical commitment and the sort of willingness to do work to improve these things so that people can use them is, it's like we said, it's what the internet was supposed to be about.
I agree, and I think that a lot of the issue is, like, I'm sure people will hear this and be like, wow, how can they talk so openly and chill about firearms and conflict? These are guns. And it's like, well, that's very normal if you live in a nice, safe place. But for people that don't, talking about firearms and weapons is like breathing, because it's literally what keeps them breathing. I mean, the reason the Kurds still exist is not because they listened to someone telling them that guns bad. It's because they went, yeah, we all need a rifle because we might be murdered by absolutely everybody. So I think that is a big part of it. And I think most people don't mean bad. I just think it's hard for them to get their head around the idea of, what is essentially extreme self-defense.
Yeah, look, you and I both come from the UK, right? We've lived in this relatively safe country.
Well, I have a butter knife license, so I'm a bit different. You know what I mean?
All right, yeah, living on the edge.
I'm living on the edge, literally. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, if we look at one protest on Armed Forces Day in 2021 in Myanmar, which was in April of 2021, 150 people were killed, right? They kettled them. Like, many of us have been kettled before at a protest, right? They surrounded them. Then they turned so they weren't shooting at each other, essentially, and then they killed everyone. Right? That's never fucking happened to me or to you or to a lot of people who are, like, shocked at this. And I understand that it's shocking if you come from a place of safety. And I would love for these kids to be in a safe place too, because it makes me really, really, really sad when they die. Like, I lose sleep is putting it mildly. Like, you can hear in the end of the last episode, I'm properly crying. Like, it really upset me. And, it's nice from your place of safety to say that these things are scary, but life is scary every single day for them, right? And, like, you got to understand also in Myanmar that every generation has this uprising, right? We have the Saffron Revolution in the early 2000s. We have the 1988, the 8888, the 8th of August 1988 uprising, right? All these uprisings get put down in a giant bloodbath. So, like, the only way for them to find democracy is from the barrel of a gun. And it's not perfect, right? Of course, they should just be able to all get together and debate, but that's not going to fucking happen. Like, the people who... Yeah, it's not. The people who have a vested interest in nothing changing also have guns and helicopters and Russian-made missiles and aircraft. So, like, I can't really begrudge a 19-year-old Burmese kid a 3D-printed gun and 8 rounds of ammunition, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to give an idea of how bad it is, one of the videos that I saw, which was just terrible, there was a rebel that they'd caught, or I don't even think he was actually like a rebel fighter. I think he was just associated with them. And the military junta there, they'd caught him, and they filmed it. They're all laughing. They'd cut off his arms and his legs from the knee and the elbow down, and they kind of dropped them in front of him, and he's just sat up, just bleeding to death, and they're all laughing, and just unbelievable. So yeah, I mean, thank God someone's helping them get weapons, because that's what they're fighting against. What else do you reckon they're like trying to do to innovate this? Are they trying to come up with, I don't know, workarounds for issues they might have? I can see almost like a new version of the FGC9 coming out directly because of what they need it for, or this, that, and the other. Have you seen anything like that? Any kind of like innovations?
Yeah, so there's a couple of other interesting, I can't remember their names now, but I know one of the lads who makes them was within correspondence with me. But there are a couple of different designs that allow you to use like a rifle round, right? A 5.56, a 308, the stuff that they can get off the military. So those things, which have been developed, it seems like chiefly in the US, certainly from English language people who post in English, I know I've messaged the lads over in Myanmar. They'll say, "Oh, this is interesting. You've seen this?" I say, "Yeah. What do you make of it?" Like, obviously, I'm in California, so like those things are not allowed here. Nor would I want a 3D printed gun because it would scare the hell out of me to think it would blow up in my face. But not that they always blow up in your face, but you know what I mean. Like, you could put something together wrong and make a mistake or whatever. So I'm always like, yeah, like I don't know if it works or not, but like I have seen it and it's very interesting. They're like, all right, we're going to try it. And, you know, then they'll say like, oh, we tried this, we tried that. You know, they're 3D printing other things. I was chatting to one of them the other day. I was chatting to you about it the other day. These 3D printed night vision goggles, right? Or night vision binoculars, which give them a huge advantage because the Tatmadaw has a little bit of night vision stuff. Some of the EAOs have night vision stuff they've been able to obtain. But like, even if it's not the best, even if it has the digital night vision has a bit of a lag. So like you move and it sort of drags. Still, if they could see at night and the Tatmadaw couldn't, that's going to give them a big advantage. Of course, they're using drones. And they'll 3D print with those, actually. It's interesting. So people will be roughly familiar with how a grenade works, right? There's a fly-off lever and a pin. And they've 3D printed a thing that looks like a bomb, right? Like a bomb that you would draw if you drew a bomb, you know, like a rugby ball shape with a fin on the back. And it's in two halves, right? So they take the pin out of the grenade. They very carefully put it into this plastic bomb that they've printed. Pop that underneath the drone. Off they go towards the soldiers, right? They see the soldiers. It drops from the drone. It's still inside its plastic casing. It hits the ground. The plastic casing is opening up, and now you've got a grenade. The lever flies off, right? So now it's going to explode. So they've taken a grenade that they have access to and turned that into like a guided munition with a civilian drone and a 3D printed part. So like that's very innovative, right? So that's an area where they're like continuing to innovate.
It's incredible, really, that they've managed to, make all this work because so many of them are so spread out into different areas. Are they all kind of communicating in that sense of like, hey, we've got an FGC9, we need the one delivered here, we need this there. How did you get that? Are they all like aware of it? Are they all trying to get in on the same thing? So
you'll hear, yeah, and so we've got this one story, this one rebel it goes by Myauk. But no one uses their real name, right? So everyone has a revolution name. Myauk means monkey. So this lad Myauk, he starts off in Yangon, and then he's going to these different ethnic armed organizations and being like, look, we've got this, it works. And they're like, oh, fuck off, it's plastic. It's, especially when they're using their like red filament or whatever, it looks like a Barbie toy. And then he'll load it up and they'll fight and they'll be like, oh, wow, all right, how many of these can we make? How do we make them? Where do we make them? What do we need? So from what we've been told from this one fighter, yeah, it's a sort of linked but decentralized process where they, and again, right, like these people don't have to be connected to the internet or each other. Once they've got a pen drive with that STL file, then they can plug that into, well, you have to slice it. You slice it, then plug it into your 3D printer. Then they can go on making them, even if every other group gets knocked out or whatever, right? So, but they do seem to use stuff like Signal and Telegram and WeChat and stuff to like update each other and do this, do that. There's a new design coming out, and you see that with the some of those networks seem to sort of predate the 3D printing because you'll see that with the different other homemade weapons, right? They call them snipers, but they're not actually that accurate from what I can see. But these bolt action rifles that they're making.
Wow, it's a whole network out there. Good luck to them, definitely. James, where can people hear this series when it comes out?
Yeah, so it'll be on the It Could Happen Here feed. If people search It Could Happen Here on a podcast app, they should find it. It's a little red logo. And it should be coming out next week. So that will be like the, I think it's actually the 8th of November, something like that, 7th of November, like next week, next Monday. And it'll be there forever, obviously. If they want to listen to our first series, they can search Myanmar Printing the Revolution. And that's also on the It Could Happen Here feed, but that's, I think, a 4 or 5 part series. And it's probably best that they do start there because that lays out a lot of like how the coup happened, what things look like on the ground for the coup happening, right? And then this series picks up with these 5 young revolutionaries. What were they doing the day of the coup? What did they do afterwards? Where are they now? Oh,
brilliant. All right, mate, where can people contact you if they want to?
Yeah. So it's James Stout. It's just my name. You can find that on Twitter. That's probably the best place to find me, to be honest. You can just DM me. My DMs are normally open. And if you want to talk on Signal or something like that, just send me a Signal number. I'll get back to you.
All right, mate. Thanks so much. That was really fascinating.
No, cheers. Thanks for having me.
was journalist James Stout speaking about JStark's legacy, specifically in Myanmar, where the rebels are using 3D printed guns, specifically the FGC 9 Mark II, to try and fight off the brutal junta in the country. If you like what we're doing here at Popular Front, you like this kind of journalism, please do consider supporting us at patreon.com/popularfront. We are grassroots, completely independent. We refuse any corporate investment. And the way we keep moving forward is we sell our bonus content on the Patreon subscription service, or you can buy our merchandise at popularfront.shop. That keeps us moving forward. Believe it or not, we're funding documentaries with t-shirts and stuff like that. So yeah, check that out, popularfront.shop, or subscribe to our Patreon, patreon.com/popularfront. Thank you to our sponsors for this episode. They are Oracle Coffee Shop in Portland, Oregon, USA. Oracle Coffee Shop is an independent coffee business selling only fair trade products. See them at 3875 Southwest Bond Avenue, 97239. And now if you go there and tell them, hey, Popular Front sent me, you will get a discount on your order, I am told. Not sure how much it is, I forgot, but yeah, tell them that we sent you. Also thank you to Grindcore House, a pair of independent coffee shops in Philadelphia, USA. One in South, one in West. Find them on socials at Grindcore House. Very good people, check them out. Also thank you to Propagandopolis, an outlet selling and writing about historical conflict propaganda from around the world. Buy prints at propagandopolis.com. Use a promo code POPULARFRONT10 for 10% off. If you want to follow us on social media, Instagram at popular.front, Twitter at popularfront_, and TikTok CCP Hell app, as opposed to Instagram being the US Zuck Hell app. But anyway, TikTok, it's at popular.front. If you want to see our kind of website where there's all information, everything like that, popularfront.co, and for all links to everything, it's popularfront.cc. I know, yeah, why have we got loads of different URLs for stuff? I don't fucking know, because we do. And if you wanna look at our YouTube, you can go to popularfront.tv. No joke. It will redirect you to youtube.com/popularfront. To be honest, right now, like, our YouTube is one of the most important things for us, because we're deeply censored by YouTube. We've gone through everything. A guy from YouTube even tried to help us. It is what it is. But yeah, we're being censored by them. It's very annoying. A lot of our content is behind age restriction things and offensive content things. Yeah, it's just awful, to be honest. Like, to go out to the front line or wherever, to a dangerous place, do all this off your own back, and then be like, oh, the tech overlords have decided that it's not advertiser friendly, so therefore they're going to make it extremely hard for anyone to view it. It's soul destroying on many levels, I'll be honest with you, but fuck it, we keep moving forward. So yeah, please do, if you can. I guess my point is, share our documentaries, youtube.com/popularfront. If you can share that, if you have a big platform, small platform, whatever, it's all good. If you can just share our stuff, we really appreciate it, because the things that were put in place to help us share our stuff are working against us, i.e. Instagram. We're constantly censored on there. They refuse to verify us, because, you know, if you're verified, you're above most of the rules. Twitter, same thing. I mean, you get places like, you get certain places that all of a sudden they get, you know, verified on every level. It's because they're suckling on the teat of a State Department or some advertising agency. We don't do that. So yeah, anyway, bitching and moaning over, but please do share our stuff. You see it all at popularfront.cc, links to all our stuff. Music in this episode, the intro was by Home, and the outro was by Sam Black. You can hear Sam Black's music at samblackpf.com. Okay, thank you very much to the high tier Patreons. We got quite a lot now. Really appreciate all of this. They are Rohan Irvine, Ryan Barbadillo, VS, Brian R, Evan Pank, Bradley Hope, Wizard Actual, Claire Hoffbauer, Chongus Bongwater, Elijah Finley, Siddhartha O, Cameron Collins, Q Loves Cake Farts, Nicholas Blomberg, Matthew Diffley, Jane Millichip, Claire, Liana, Sean, Christianovich, NTHG, Arturo Rafael Macias, I hope I've said that right, mate, let me know if I didn't. Ethan Zwick, Champagne Anarchist, Elise Middlefart, David McManus, Tom Petrie, James Leons, Lisa Milgram, Bradley Davies, No Dogs No Hamsters, Brendan Crave, B, Drift, RX, Tiki Lover, Ben Marshall, Dallas Dunn, Shikhar Gupta, LD50 Seattle, the hardcore band, check them out, very cool lads. K Clater Vulcan, Bethany Swoveland, Adam H, Derivative Fool, Ball of Water, Larson 8669, Ivan Julien, Bjorn Kirsten, Diamond Steen, Michael O'Connor, Disgrunt, Jack Doherty, Nicholas Butter, JD, Jav, Ian Froese, James Cully, Tynan Daly, Ethan, Shanklin the Painter, Fitz Madrid, Ed Coulthard, D-San, Mike Barone, Ben, Scott Hopton, Liam Williams, Chris Cusimano, DZA, Giorgio Arani, DR, Amy R, Rubicon, Frank Austin, Amelia Me, Christina Rivetti, Freya Northman, Noah, Andrew Hurley, Vida Provost, Brian McLaughlin, Tom Lochrin, Young Wasabi, Tony Bin, Adam Berg Snyder, JL, Stephen Davila, Dan Dunham, Fletcher, Chad Walker, Diana Gorvanek, Lawrence Abrahams, Peter McCormack from What Bitcoin Did, Christopher Martin, Ryan Sandercock, and Maurice Zumbul. Thank you all so much. Most of these people have been with us for so long on a higher tier. It's mad to me like that everyone supports like that. Really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. A lot more is coming in 2023. I know we're not that close to it, but we have so many plans. Very much looking forward to it. So thank you all so much for continuing to support. Like I said, if anyone wants to support us, if anyone wants to keep us going, you can go to patreon.com/popularfront or popularfront.co/support.